Hey, and welcome to Elementary Teaching Tips. I'm Mr. C, and let me just tell you a little bit about me and then what I'm going to do in this video and then what I'm going to do on this channel. My name's Mr. C. I am a professor in teacher education. So, I teach a lot of courses on school and society, curriculum and instruction. I supervise student teachers throughout the district. So, I work with a lot of elementary school teachers. Now, I am a former elementary school teacher. I taught for a number of years in fifth grade and absolutely loved it. People always ask, what do you like more, being a professor or being an elementary school teacher? It's apples to oranges, right? So, as an elementary school teacher, you really get to know your students and their families well. You see them grow and develop. You see their lives change over not just in the time in your class, but over years and decades. And that's super, super rewarding. Being a professor is also really rewarding, but you get to know your students for a much shorter period of time. You can also see light bulbs turn on and see course corrections, but you don't have that same connection that you would have in a K-12 setting. But being a professor has a much more flexible schedule. There are a lot of perks that come with just being able to engage with your colleagues in different ways, doing research, etc. So different things. I love them both, but I am a professor right now and I love my job. Now, this channel, Elementary Teacher Tips, is something that I created years and years ago, and I just never posted content to it. But my students continue to ask me questions that I answer in class, and I ask through video responses to my online students. But I thought, why not make some of these public? Because other teachers out there have the same questions. So I want this channel to be an opportunity for me to share the experiences I've had, the research that I'm looking at, and in some cases contributing to. And I just want to share kind of what's it like to be an elementary school teacher. Now, the way we're going to start that off with this video is I'm actually taking the slides from my first day of class in a university classroom where I teach about education, school, and society. And I want you to see kind of, I'm going to go through the slides with you and talk about what a first class period might look like in higher education, how that might compare to what you would do in an elementary school classroom, because there's a lot of overlap. And then at the end of this, there are a bunch of student questions that came on my first day of class. I always ask my students to write reflections, and in those reflections, they can ask me follow-up questions. And to answer those follow-up questions, I'll make a bunch of short videos that I'll start publishing a few a day just to answer student questions. And so that will be connected to this video because it'll be a response to this video, but they'll be standalone short videos. All right, so let me hop over to my slides, and I'm literally just using the slides I use in class, and we'll talk about them. I'm not going to teach this class. You're not going to get the same lesson my students get because you haven't done the preparation, you haven't read the articles, you haven't done any of that kind of preparation. We're not face-to-face, so we're not going to have the chance for that kind of interaction. But I want to just quickly show you kind of what I've done. So we'll head over. I start the class with this slide where I have my students think about a teacher who's made an impact on them. And so as we would call this bell work, as they're coming into class, this prompt is up on the board and it gives them something to do immediately. So students aren't coming to class and wondering what they should do, wondering where they should sit or anything. It just sit down, start working on this. They have a 3x5 card on their table. So that's what they do. Now, we'll refer back to this throughout the lesson, and I'll collect them, and sometimes I use them, other times I just throw them away. But that's how I start my class. Then from there, we talk about, all right, this is Education 1010. Let's go over some policies and procedures. I do that really quickly. And then I do this thing. Oh, my face is over the E there. Let's drop that down. I talk about note taking, and this is something that a lot of students come into my class and they're anxious about exams, right? And so I explain to them, hey, in this class, this is a survey course. And if you're not familiar with what a survey course is, it means that you're going to cover a lot of topics, but you're not going to do a deep dive on any of those topics. So this is exposure and really discussion based, which means we're not memorizing a ton of things that you would regurgitate for an exam. So I don't have exams as part of this class. Also, I talk about note taking. So that's what this slide is about here is note taking, because I want my students to understand that I really want them to engage with this material, but I don't want them to do the things they've done in other classes specifically to prepare for a test, right? We don't want to teach to the test here. We want to teach for understanding. And so I go through this quick thing where I talk about coding. You know, as a programmer, as a coder, we have different ways of organizing information and putting that code out so it turns into something. As students, we do that same thing with our brain. So first we capture information, and you might do that through note taking. You might do it through simply listening. But then we organize that information for students that's putting it in a notebook or saving a file on their computer. But here is what is important for my classes. Then we make sense of that information, right? And the way I do this in my class, I have my students write reflections. And they talk about what were like the three main ideas from this class period. What were the main things that we talked about? Say it in your own words. So they're distilling it just like as at a distillery, you would take the different ingredients and you would distill it down to its essence. We're trying to do that with our thoughts, right? With what we've listened to in class, with what we've taken notes on. And then finally, we want to express that. And so the way we do that is we share it with someone else. And so at the end of class, they might turn and talk to a neighbor. What did we talk about today? What were the big ideas? They'll certainly do that through a written reflection to me. They'll share with me, here are the things I was thinking about. Here's how it relates to my own life and my own experiences. So I just quickly go through that. I kind of gave you a mini version of the lecture there, and I didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. We talk about classroom expectations, about showing up, being on time, doing your work, and what they expect of me as a teacher. I'll get my work done on time. I'll come to class prepared. We'll always start on time. Sometimes we'll end early, but we'll always start on time. I have a pretty quick turnaround on grading things, etc. So I just kind of say, here's what I expect from you, here's what you expect from me, and we have a discussion, right? We want it to be a somewhat democratic classroom. So we talk about what are reasonable expectations. Then I talk about how the traditional classroom is set up and how a lot of what we'll do is part of a flipped classroom. And a flipped classroom, the idea here is you do a lot of the work before you come to school, and then school is where you discuss those ideas, ask questions. It's basically where you do your homework, right? So you do your lesson at home, and then you do your homework at school, which is the opposite of the traditional model, but it works really well in higher education. Now, as I get I'll try to get through most of this and then I'll talk about how it relates to an elementary classroom. Let's keep going. Um, Traditional model, again, kind of the sage on the stage, having a traditional lecture versus what I like to do, which is guide on the side, where there's more coaching. It's more of a lab environment where I'll give students assignments in class and then I'll coach them on it. So they'll work in groups and I'll come around and answer their questions. So it's a somewhat different model from the traditional sage on the stage. I do work with online students and I do a lot of the same things with them. We just structure it in different ways. And then we dance. So I love this part of my class, and we'll talk about this more later, but I always break up my classes with something fun, maybe a game like a traditional game in elementary school, Heads Up 7 Up, or Mannequin, or Four Corners, or we'll do a short dance break, which I actually did a lot of in elementary school as well. So we'll do that. And that's the first half of our class. So first 45 minutes. Then the second part is helping my students understand themselves. And we do that through a number of activities. Sorry, let me fix this. I have them pull out a piece of paper, they fold it in half. On one side, they say things they're good at, and the other side's things they don't like or they're not good at. And then we talk about, just things in general. What are some of our strengths in this class? If you've done like the Strengths Finders assessments, it kind of borrows from that, but we're kind of just thinking about what are we good at? What do we like to do? And this matters if you're thinking about becoming a school teacher. Then on the back side of that or on a separate piece of paper, they fold it into 4 quadrants. And on those 4 quadrants, now let me put myself back up here. They write personal, professional, people, and play. And then these are my notes from my own experience, but I have them, I'll talk about personal. So when we talk about the 4 Ps, what are the things that you do for self-care? Like, so for me, it's going running or walking, talking to my wife, eating ice cream. That's what I do when I'm stressed out, right? Then we go down to the lower quadrant, list all the people you're closest to, your friends, your family, your roommates, those kinds of things. In the upper right quadrant, we talk about professional things, what you need to have success. And this is where we kind of talk about classroom expectations. I have to do my homework, I have to show up, participate, things like that. Then in the bottom right quadrant, we list the activities we like to do, the things that make us excited. And this is similar to the upper left quadrant where we talk about self-care, but it can be like, I love to play ultimate frisbee, I geek out on the 80s, stuff like that, just things that we're interested in. From there, now we've kind of understand ourselves a little bit better, what makes us tick. These are things that I have my students keep. They're not going to share this with me or others. I just want them thinking about what is most important to you as a person, because now we're going to talk about the possibility of becoming a teacher and what we do in schools. So one last prompt I give them is, what are you most proud of? Actually, I often skip this one, but I probably shouldn't. I want my students to think about what matters to them and what have they done up to this point in their life that they're really proud of. And hopefully it's who they're becoming. Maybe it's that they're very caring or sharing. Maybe they're considerate. Maybe they respect history. Those are often the things instead of, I made a lot of money, I have a lot of influence on YouTube or whatever. So you can give them different ideas, but we talk kind of about that. We talk about our bucket list, what we want to accomplish, which of course is related. Then they watch this video. I'm not going to play it for you, but it's a TED Talk on your life's purpose. It's coming up with your life's purpose in 5 minutes. And I'll stop it throughout. I have, this video where we'll, I don't know if it's going to play or not. It shows different parts of this, and I'll stop it at different points just to add clarifying details. But my students are taking notes on this and coming up with their own life's purpose, which is really fun. When they're done, I show them, this is the first time, but you can come up with this a lot of times. My life's purpose, I give direction, encouragement, and support to people who want to make a difference in the world so they can live on purpose. That's something I talk about a lot, being intentional and make meaningful contributions to the world. So we kind of talk about our life's purpose, and I might end with the high five, talking about why I high five my students instead of shake their hands. We're not going to go into that right now. And that's the end of my lesson. So why does that matter for elementary school students? And how might this classroom be different? You'll notice the first thing I do is I put them right to work. Then, and I have them do something that is low stakes, right? There's no right or wrong answer when they think of their favorite teacher or a teacher who made a difference in their life. So keep it low stakes, have them do something. Then, as we're getting to know each other, it's through expectations. What's this class going to look like? And I'm trying to establish that precedent right in the beginning by how I treat my students as they come in, as I greet them, as they get started on the bell work, as I go around and make sure that they're, meeting one another. So we kind of set that precedent. Then as I go through what's important for this class, I talk about note taking. I talk about kind of what the basic assignments will be, the structure of the class. In an elementary classroom, I would do the same thing. Hey, this year we're going to learn some of these kinds of things, and I'll hit some of the high points. In social studies, we're going to learn about the Renaissance, and here's some of my favorite things about the Renaissance. In math, we're going to learn how to do these kinds of problems, and I'll talk about, this matters to me because this has doubled my income by applying some of the math skills that you'll develop this year. I've applied these in my own life, and it's helped me make more money. So we'll talk about some of those things. But we're trying to make real world connections right away as we go over expectations. It looks like it's still going. Sorry. So that's going to be a blurb. I'm not going to edit these out because I just want to get you the information. So that's how we kind of set up our first day of class, whether it's at the university level or K through 12. Now, obviously, K-12, you're going to have a lot of time with your students. So you're going to go through each of the curriculums with them individually. You're going to hand out the books. The one big difference between higher ed and elementary school is how much time you spend that first day and that first week in doing policies and procedures, right? So you spend a lot of time going over expectations, but you talk about, this is how we line up, and you practice it. And you might practice it 4 or 5 times on that first day. Here's what we do when we go to specials. Here's what we do when we go to lunch. Here's how I have you arranged in your seating chart right now, and here's why I have a seating chart. Here's what you do if you're frustrated. And so we talk about all the different scenarios. The problem that I've seen with a lot of new teachers is on that first day, it does seem overwhelming for the students and it's overwhelming for the teachers as well because there's so much stuff to cover. So my one piece of advice that I'll end with here is have fun. Make sure that you are having fun with your students on that first day, that you've planned things that you look forward to as a teacher. Like when I dance with my students, partly it's because they need to get up and move around, they need to help with transitions, but partly it's because I have a lot of fun with my students getting up and dance. And I always make a fool of myself that first time I stand at the front of the classroom because they're going to be self-conscious about dancing, right? And so I'm the one up at the front of the classroom exaggerating all the movements. So they're giggling watching me. But then when we get done, I ask them, how many of you were worried about people watching you and maybe teasing you? And a lot of hands will go up. Well, how many of you actually did that and looked around the classroom and watched other people dance? And almost no hands go up. How many of you saw Mr. C? And all the hands go up and they start giggling. And I say, hey, look, in this class, I'm going to model things for you, but I also want this to be a safe space. Don't be so worried about people watching you. Most of us are most concerned about what's happening in our own little sphere of influence, right? So people aren't watching you. They're worried about how well they're doing it. And let's just remember that as we go through the class. But it really puts them at ease that Mr. C can make mistakes, that he can be a little silly. And so I like to have that on that first day. So my big piece of advice again is make sure you have fun. Now let me turn the tables and ask you the question. Those of you who are school teachers, or even if you have never taught but you've been a student, what are your favorite things from that first day and that first week of class? How do you like to start the year off? What are the things that have made a difference for you in establishing a safe classroom environment and establishing expectations that are productive and healthy? What are things that you've seen in your classroom that have really made you excited to be in that classroom? I want to know. Drop that in the comments. And then, of course, I have my student questions that I'll just put out as shorts for this video, and maybe I'll link to them in the description. So if you want to see the list of questions, you can just check those out in the description for this video. All right, thanks. And don't forget to like and subscribe, do all those things.